Welcome to Katie's Bookshelf, my new BookTube account, which is really exciting. So welcome to my very first video. So today, since it's my very first time filming a YouTube video for this channel, I thought I'd just do a little welcome, a little intro as to who I am as a reader and just see if our book vibes match. So I'm going to show a little bit of info about me and then some of the books that I currently have on my TBR, some of the books that I think reflect my tastes, and then give you a little insight into what might be coming next on this new Katie's Bookshelf BookTube channel. If the books and the vibes in this video are up your street, then make sure you give me a subscribe so that we can be I was gonna say book talk, but it's not book talk, BookTube friends. This is gonna get some getting used to. So hi, I'm Katie, as you can probably tell by the channel name. I'm 28 and I live in the northwest of the UK, in the northwest of England. My favourite book genres, I think I read a really widespread range of books, which is nice, but I guess my top ones are probably I love a romantasy, love fantasy. I do love that genre, which I know is very popular at the moment, but I'm also like a big historical fiction fan, especially if it's like Tudor related. Love a bit of that. I love dark retellings, so dark retellings or dark reimaginings of fairy tales, which I love. That's one of my favourite types of books to read. But then I also quite like dystopian thrillers, so I guess think a little bit along the lines of like Handmaid's Tale vibes as well. So I like a little bit of everything. I'm not a massive reader of horror books, not a massive reader of like detective thrillers and crime thrillers, only because I watch those a lot on TV and I tend to prefer to watch them as to read them. Same actually with like rom-com style books. I love a romance in a fantasy book or like a high stakes book, but just like bog standard romance in day-to-day life, less so. I've read one or two, but I don't tend to enjoy them as much as I enjoy watching rom-com films. So those are my favourite genres, but I just thought I would bring you along to have a little look at my bookshelves. I don't actually have one bookshelf. I have books dotted around my apartment, but my goal one day is to hopefully one day own a house and then have a library room where I can have floor to ceiling books on bookshelves. That is the goal. But for now, let me show you where my books are kept. This is the main event. We also we have some books over here. So that's the back of before. I need to put some more books on the back of here. But this here is in the back of this unit. It needs a little bit of a sort out, but there are books there as well. Any look familiar? But then on this side of my kind of couch living room area, I have most of the books that I own. I also read quite a lot on Kindle, but most of them that I have physical are here. So they all sit here, along with some like knick-knacky trinket bits. So most of them all sit on here. I've read most of these. I think some over here, this is more TBR on this row here. Not all of them, but some of them. But I think most of these books are books that I have read. Up until about 5 minutes ago, I also had some on my stairs. So those are where my books are kept at the moment. I mean, when I was a kid, my dad made me a little bookshelf on my wall with like kind of floating designs on them, which is really cute. But for now, they're all over the place, which I quite like because it means that wherever I am in my apartment, I can see my books. So I just had a fight with my piles of books. Some fell on me, but they're all fine. The books are all fine. So I thought I would show you what I last read, what I'm currently reading, and what my next read is, and then some books that I think really define who I am as a reader in terms of the different genres that I like to read. So I thought we'd start with my last read. So there will be a theme in these 3 books I'm about to show you because they are one series. So my last book was This Woven Kingdom by Tahira Mafi, which I only heard of a few months ago, but it seems to be then quite popular when I've been on TikTok and stuff, but I have only heard of it a few months ago. But that was my last read, so obviously then, because it's a series, the second read and my current read, This Infinite Threads by the same author, and I'm about maybe almost halfway through that one, and then assuming that book all goes well, I will read the third one, which is All This Twisted Glory. So that is my current reading world. Move those to the side. Now, some books that I think kind of represent my reading taste. So we'll go through these in no particular order, apart from the order they've ended up on my desk. So the first one is 6 Tudor Queens by Alison Weir. I did try and find the first one. I definitely have the first one, but she's hiding somewhere. I don't know where, so we'll have to dig her out at some point. But now it makes me think I have books hidden somewhere that I didn't know existed, so that's a job for another time. So I've pulled out the second one, which obviously is Anne Boleyn. These books are beautiful, they're really well written, they are quite dense, but they are written in a way that doesn't read dense, which is nice. So I'm a big historical fiction fan, I love reading, particularly like I say about like Tudor eras, but I've read Celtic. I've read normally like UK historical fiction tends to be the way that I lean, but I'm sure if there were books from other countries with that element, I'm sure I'd enjoy those too. But this series is quite long, obviously because there are 6 wives, but really, really great. And historical fiction is something that I have really enjoyed because I learn a lot from it, and we learn a lot of like UK history in school, in English schools, but it's quite repetitive and you don't learn a lot of details. So I've really enjoyed learning the details of historical events from my own country, but through technically fiction. But from what I've researched, they're pretty accurate. And Alison Weir is an amazing historical fiction writer, so she's definitely one of my favourites who I will come back to time and time again. So that's the first part. The second one is, I guess this one is like fantasy, but that isn't the reason that it's on the list. The reason it's on the list is because it's fantasy based on other cultures. So this, I think, is based on Chinese mythology. This is The Daughter of the Moon Goddess, but why can't I speak today? Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tang, which is just a beautiful book. The most beautiful book cover I think I've ever owned. Big claim, but I think it's true. And I've loved, in the past few years, I've read more books from other cultures. And this one and a few others that kind of, because I think this Woven Kingdom actually is, it's got kind of Persian influence in there as well. Obviously it's magical and it's fantasy, same with both of them, but they are based on those mythologies and histories, which I think is really cool. So I love reading books that aren't just about fantastical white women with a sword. I like those books too. I'm sure we'll find one of those in a moment. But reading fantasy inspired books from other cultures has been a new addition to my reading taste. Let me neaten these up. Next we have Alice by Christina Henry, which I think represents my interest in dark, gruesome retellings of fairy tales. And this, you don't get much darker, I don't think, than this book. So love a little bit. I mean, all the twisted tales, you can probably see her behind me here, the Disney ones, so they're good, but this is like a level up. So there was a massive bee outside my window. I got a little bit scared. Yeah, fly away, please. So yes, I'm a massive Disney fan and a big fairy tales fan, always have been. So as I've kind of grown older, and then obviously reading more mature books, reading books that take on the world and ideas of fantasy fairy tales, but with the themes and energy of modern day issues and themes, I really enjoy this type of book as well. Next, I have The Grace Year by Kim Liggett, which represents my love of dystopian thriller type books, I guess. So this is, I describe this one as a little bit like Handmaid's Tale meets a little bit of Hunger Games, but it's its own book. But they are a real area of interest for me in terms of reading. So love, normally, like I said, it's like remove dystopian worlds that are recognisable, if you like, in parallel to our own world, that focus on female heroes normally. And you may have noticed actually, I think all of the books that I have here are by female authors. That's not on purpose. I don't actively seek out only female authors. It's just that the books I read tend to be written by women, and normally feature female protagonists. I have read male protagonist books, but it tends to be the female protagonists that I identify with the most, which I guess makes sense as I myself am a female. So female dystopian dark world-ending books are also high on my list. Again, quite gruesome, quite dark, but very enjoyable for me. Then we jump completely to the other end of the spectrum, and I love young adult books. Young adult fantasy books are where my love of reading as a teenager really took root, and we'll talk about that another day. I've always loved reading since I was like a young child. My parents read to me all the time, so always loved it. But I think when I got really into things like series and world building was through young adult fantasy. So this one I only bought a month ago. So this isn't from teenage years, but it represents them. This is Cold Hearted by Leah Stone and Julie Hall, which is fairy versus evil world. Worlds are connected. Princess kind of has to go and try and save her world and meets Dark Lord, and there's a lot of sexual tension. So this is a series of 4 books. I bought all 3 thinking it was just 3, and it's 4, so I have to wait for the next one in September. But this is another one where I zip through these books. The other books that I've shared are quite, because they're quite mature and quite dense, I tend to read I'm a generally fast reader, I think. Not super fast like some people I find on these apps, but I'm a moderately fast reader, whereas these books I will zip through. So love a little bit of easy reading, young adult, romance, fantasy, world books. And then finally, one of my favourite tastes in reading, and my friend always says that she knows I'll like a book if it has blue and then gold, like leafing or gold detail on the book. And she's right, and that's normally because they are Greek mythology retellings, or any mythology retellings, but this Greek in particular tends to draw my attention, I guess because there's so much subject material, and it was quite popular last year in terms of book releases. So this is Medea by Rosie Hewitt, which is the most recent Greek mythology book that I have read, but I have read quite a few. And again, I think it's because I didn't learn a lot about Greek myths and stories. I learnt small bits in school, but not loads, given how vast, again, the subject area is. So I've loved learning about those history periods and those tales and myths, but I've preferred learning about them through the eyes of women. And I'm looking at the vilified women or the silenced women in these genres. I'm reading books that take their point of view and work around those. So those are my reading tastes. If anyone has read any of those books or identifies with any of those themes, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know your thoughts. If you think there are any books that I've read that you think, oh, if you like that, you'll like this, let me know, because my TBR is never ending. So the final thing to share is just kind of what book content am I going to be creating. So I like to think that a lot of these books, some of them you will have seen before, but I think quite a lot of the books that I talk about are ones that maybe aren't over consumed, the ones you don't see all the time on things like Book Talk. So I like to think that I'll be able to kind of give some hidden gem book reviews, book recommendations, just some general book reviews, general content and themes and recommendations, which I hope you will join me in this fantastic book ride. I'd love to have some more BookTube besties to share all of my book musings with. So have a lovely rest of your day and happy reading.